So Natalie, you recently joined JET. So if somebody asks you what JET does, what do you tell them?
I think we do a lot of research which is evidence-based and which we as an implementer can actually use in terms of how do we change and create change within the education sector. We have an excellent monitoring and evaluation unit which is growing by the day, and we are an implementer with a number of partners. So I think JET does a number of things, and we're in the process of consolidating the number of things to make it the excellent things while still being very innovative.
So it's an interesting value chain that we have from the research, the implementation to the M&E. There are very few organizations in the country that have that, if any, and I think it's a very unique strength. But maybe Ashley, you can help us explain what JET does to a young child.
Yeah, so basically you have to go sit down with that 5-year-old and tell them JET is actually somebody or an organization. We go to a school, for instance, ask questions, take back the questions, and then we rework those questions to help you when you go to the big school. Because if you use those kind of words, they feel important, and if you use those descriptive words, I mean, they will understand. So yeah, go to the school, get questions, answers, and you rework those to help him or her for a better schooling in the next phase. But James, as a CEO of this wonderful organization, what are some of the memorable projects that you've worked on in JET?
Many of them are quite tough, eh? I think those that one remembers best are those that were the most difficult sometimes. But we've got some exciting projects. For example, we do a lot of work at the moment on data ecosystems and helping government around how different data systems in the country can link together. The fancy term is interoperability, but for everyday speak, it's about linking different data systems, and I think that's super exciting. But how about you, Cleo? What is your day job?
So for me, I don't get to work on the actual projects, but I get to interview everybody who works on all of these projects. So one day I'm a leather expert, one day I'm an M&E expert because of my work. But the nice thing is when you know that you've picked the right candidate for the organization, somebody who fits in within the culture and who believes in what we stand for as an organization, and who it also links with their values as a normal individual and a person, you know, and it fulfills you knowing that, like, when the person after 3 months they've settled in well within the organization, and to them it's no longer just a job. It's like knowing the outputs that we've given out there and how it has changed, and it's going to change a lot of young people's lives within education, whether it's ECD or TVET or even matric. So yeah.
So interestingly that you should say that, Cleo. I mean, one of my motivations for joining the organization was around its values and how I align myself personally within those values, and some of those that really speak to me around social justice, around how we want to ensure as an organization that we, within the public school education system, we create equity and equality around the improvement of the landscape, ensuring that quality education for all, but also one of the things internally within the organization around putting people first.
So if we care about people so much and we've got such a good culture, Cleo, and maybe Melissa, I can ask you this question. Is it like an easy life? Do you just do you work 4 hours a day? How hard do you work?
Yeah, no, it's quite tough working at JET. I think we have a lot of talented people in the organization in different fields, but it is quite tough. There's a lot of pressure, but I think it also grooms you.
So Cleo spoke a little bit to that, and maybe Natalie, you can come in as well. We recruit for 2 things. So can I test you guys on it, or should I say it? But we recruit for 2 things. We recruit for people that are activists at heart, but researchers in the orientation, or researchers might be a bit of a broad term. Sometimes we use consultant or researcher, or somebody who's interested in evidence. Actually, you spoke about evidence just now. Those are the 2 characteristics, and we find that the other stuff can come later.
JET is dynamic. JET thinks out of the box. We act out of the box. We're sitting in the wind, not the best conditions to have a structured process that we want to share, but we out here and we're making it happen, basically. So I think even the way that we use data, and Melissa, in terms of M&E, that can be such an abstract concept, but how do you transfer what data means to actually create change? in your unit?
So I think M&E is really important in all aspects of work, not even just the education sector, just evidence-based research, and that's what we do through M&E. It's saying that, okay, you've done this Anglo project, but what does it mean? How are the learners doing? Essentially, how are teachers doing? Are coaches actually going to school every day, or is it just the case of like we're putting all this money in and we see no results in the project? So I think just data and evidence base is really important in the work that we do in all research, just to make sure that okay, we're doing all of this research and all these interventions, but what are we learning from it as well? And I think that's why M&E is also quite a central part of the work that we do in the organization.
Yeah.
It's a very important piece of work around working in rural communities where the standard of education and the learning outcomes are quite poor in terms of, as Melissa said, very important of data collection in M&E, what we are finding, and the importance then of working with the schools and the relevant stakeholders within the education sector to improve that standard of education.
Okay. Claire, what's not working at JET?
I think maybe the long working hours. We have really long working hours, but in the end they pay off. So it's a give and take, you know. It's kind of like a catch-22 situation. We put in the hours, but when you see the outputs that we produce, it's like it was really worth it.
Natalie, do you think our external stakeholders understand our strategy and the work we do? When we use words like disintermediation and interoperability and this stuff, do you think our external stakeholders have a sense of what we do?
I think they have a good sense of what we do. That's why they come to us. And with our new strategy, we have been very clear that we want to amplify that we are the go-to organization. We are the go-to NPO. We are the go-to think tank when it comes to education and creating change. So yes.
Just on Natalie's point, which is a very important one, because we harness a lot of knowledge within the organization. And we don't treat it as our own knowledge because, again, and hide it away. And we've started a very thorough and very exciting process for me of publishing some of this knowledge out and contributing to the education sector. So, James, which out of these publications stands out for you and why? And why do you think it's important that we do these publications?
I think some of our newer publications are really positioning as well. We launched one last week on education for sustainable development, for example. It's a little bit out of the box for us. It's not an area we've really worked in, but it's important. And we published it and released it last week with the SADC Secretariat and had UNESCO involved and so on. So that's a nice one for me. And then a lot of our newer data-related publications are really good. But maybe my key point around WMISA would be that we all need to publish as jet setters. We all need to study further, and I'm always on people's case about this, is are you writing enough? Because if we don't practice what we preach, we can't be good at our jobs.
I have a question for you, Natalie. So I think over the past year or past 6 months, I've noticed that there's been like a deliberate effort at improving staff wellness. We've had wellness sessions, we've had just been a lot of initiatives. Can you tell me what was behind that? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, we want to make true the vision that we put people first. That's of course quite important. And during this COVID period, we got a sense that we starting to have a bit of a disconnect. Less people are coming to work. People have lost the balance just around work, and maybe family. People have lost loved ones, they've had financial hardships, etc. And the focus on wellness was really to remind people that you're a community when you talk to each other, when you connected. So that connectedness can't be like how we have the luxury today to sit close to each other. And that is where the thinking came from. A couple of months ago, the start of the 2021, James and I also had like 10, 15, 20-minute check-ins with staff. And I checked last night, James, about 75% of staff took up the invitation to have a check-in with us.
Yeah, maybe just to add on to that, I think I mean, your workspace, spend quite a lot of time at it, right, with the people, and you build relationships. And I would say I've built lifelong friendships with some people at JET over the past 3 years, and that's another important part of, you know, our community as well, friendship.
Yes. So Vumisa and Ashley, especially for you that need to go out to schools, how did COVID impact on your interaction with your core stakeholders?
And it was COVID. I think, I mean, I suppose everyone knows the impact of COVID and how it impacted schooling. But for us that are in the coalface and work with schools and people, one of the things we always say is in order to effect good quality, you have to interact with your teachers, with your principals, with your stakeholders, because that's the best way that you impart knowledge. So not having that social interaction in that sense was extremely difficult. And trying to build relationships through digital means was a new challenge, which is part of the exciting journey of the new JET strategy, I suppose.
So because this video is being recorded, it's probably going to remain for a long time in the way we use it. So if your grandchildren look at it one day, or your family, whatever, look at it in 10 or 15 years' time and they see you, what would you want to tell them now, speaking into the future?
I think it's something that I tell my children. No matter what you do, don't go for the easy things. Have fun and try and do good in most of what you do.
So I would say, like, don't be afraid of trying anything, you know. Sometimes I think I've been very lucky. There's nothing special about me, honestly. Like, I've just been fortunate. It could have been anyone, you know. I happened to go to a good school in East London because I got in. It could have been any of my cousins from the village, for instance, you know. Like, don't be afraid to try anything. And I think in everything that you do, I try and do everything with kindness.
So for me, I think maybe 10 or 15 years from now, I'm telling a young Cleo, I would say, don't be too comfortable, don't get too complacent, because you'd never realize like your full potential. If you're just grateful because you have a job and you have a salary, you wouldn't be where you are.
Building meaningful relationships are very important. Relationships sustain you in your current moment, but also in future as well. So that would be the first one. The second one is keep building yourself through accessing knowledge. Whatever knowledge drives you, whatever knowledge you're passionate about, whatever you want to learn, and knowledge in the broader sense of education. Never stop feeding yourself.
In 10 years' time, I will be over 50 and I will not be single, but I will forever remain a jet setter. It's embedded and engraved in my heart. And working in the UK, I got the privilege to meet the Queen and QC and all of her council, blah, blah, blah. And I called my dad at that time, he was still alive, and I said, Dad, I met the Queen, I met the Queen's council, and I felt important. Sure. But sitting here, I know my dad is so proud that I am surrounded by such a lot of people that actually adds value to my life.
The thing that I would tell myself in 10 years is, was I kind, Melissa, to your point? And did I stay humble? Because if you lose that, all the other stuff that you do in life just dissipates. Because you become this important person with a PhD and earning a good salary and ordering people around. By the way, at home I get ordered around, so just in case you were wondering.
Balance.
Yeah.